I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel in a Journey. Journeying now for 30 years into the life and practice of yoga, I have met many who have taken interesting turns, went past extraordinary bumps, and reached unexpected places. People with whom I shared conversations about everyday struggles, intimate realizations, larger questions, ideas, and dreams. So today, I'm passing on the mic to one of them so we could hear and celebrate the wisdom in people's differences and experiences. Hello, very warm welcome to Outer Travel in a Journey with Alexandra. And today on my show, I have Jannetje van Leeuwen. Hello, Jan. How are you?
I'm great. Lovely to see you, Alex.
It's good having you. I'm so excited about this already. There is always such an inkling in me, you know, I kind of see powerful women and sometimes powerful men, and I really want to bring them in. And sometimes I don't know why I'm bringing them in. And then in the conversation, all this magic happens. And and I think the magic in your story lies a little bit in that you are so multifaceted on a business level, but also, you know, having different opportunities to express yourself. So I don't really know how to introduce you. As you said, you know, it used to be a director of, and now you're so much more, you know, a mentor for startups. You are still running an agency to print for signage, and you have a big Irish client because you're based in Ireland. You do work with Guinness. And you're an investor. That's what you kind of call yourself. I think that's the most clear thing. But what do you invest yourself in? That would be my first question, really, to you.
Well, if literally in the sort of, if you look at it as a job title, then I'm an angel investor. So I would invest in mainly early stage startups, ones that I have a connection with and I can feel that I can contribute to, so that I can either function as an advisor or a mentor, or that I can open up my network, because probably that's one of my super strengths, would be that I'm very connected and I enjoy moving in those connections, and I see links and connections between people that not everybody would make the jump, and I find it easy to introduce. So I find that process, or I've learned how to do that in a way that is I guess respectful of both people. So I would do it what you call a double opt-in. I check with both people, are they happy for the introduction to happen? And then that's so facilitated then that when the connection is made, it's easy for both parties. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, traditionally, you know, we all come from a background, I think like our age group, you know, the millennial age group and before, we come from a career idea of you either study something or you get an education in something and then you build it from there. And for some of us, we find that we might have not chosen what really suits us, and then we change. But how do you end up being so multifaceted and so trusting in that you can do all that?
Okay, so how that happens is what, I mean, there's the actual journey. Like, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur, and definitely that's what I would what I am. So I'm a starter, and that's you know, and I find finishing is not always it's not my strength. Starting stuff is what I'm good at, and I get excited about it. Let's put it that way. So I would have job hopped a lot. So my first jobs, I was business consultant. I was working in IT as a project manager. I did two very different studies. I did a master's in English language and literature, which I loved, but not from a work point of view. And then I did a master's in multimedia technology, which I also loved. So I did a lot of different things, and I worked with Microsoft for a year, but never probably more than a year. I was always uncomfortable, and I really didn't enjoy not being able to shape myself the direction. So so even though I worked very well in a team and I worked well with my bosses or superiors in a relational level, I didn't like not being able to decide myself what I wanted to do. So that, I think that was that kind of entrepreneurial piece that didn't get space to breathe. But then the confidence piece is definitely, I've always, and I've been very aware of that, attribute that to my parents, especially my mom, I think, who basically my whole life I was always told you can do whatever you want, whatever you put your hands to, whatever you touch will be amazing or gold, or whatever way the language she used would be different. But I never had, so I didn't necessarily get a lot of clarity, and that would be one of the things that I struggled with. So it wasn't like, not so much help in deciding what, but very much help in feeling that I could do whatever I needed to do, and that confidence, I think, of just jumping. And then, if it's the wrong rock you jumped off, then you just find another rock and jump off that, like it's not
It is, and so many things come right to the surface for me when I listen to you. It's like, of course, our parents have been influential next to society that treated women as, you have to hold your place, as in, being a good wife, being a good mother, being, all that. And then if somebody really got the opportunity like you to be supported all the way through in liberal thinking of just self-exploration, that's what it sounds to me very much like. It's a good jump start, but it's not the only thing that you manage. It was a base to you. That's what it sounds to me, to look freely into all of that. But despite all that, there is also the trap of then you can fly from one thing to another and never feel like you really landed. So what helped you really land in being more clear and maybe also more powerful and grounded in what you do?
I don't know if I actually have landed.
My assumptions.
Yeah.
Excuse me, listeners.
No, well, I don't know. I think
assuming.
I'm quite conscious of the fact that some of the traditional check boxes that people, work towards achieving, maybe a status or a job title or some, being able to buy a house or having a certain figure on the bank account, all of those kind of things, they've never really interested me. But I guess I reached that a while ago. So that pressure is not there. And I was never really, it's something I don't know, just always, I'm never really interested in that more. It actually, if I find that really difficult, and I find that's one of the most difficult things now, that we live in the society where there's this God of more, say, that it's never enough. And I would say that probably it's the searching for that. Like I haven't found it, but it's the awareness that doesn't give me any, it just doesn't interest me. But I'm very conscious that I'm speaking from a point of privilege, because I'm not worried about how to get my next meal on the table, or if I can pay my rent or mortgage at the end of the month. So there is, it's interesting to see that.
And to me, what you kind of named earlier is that trust in when you jump, you're gonna land, and a lot of us have difficulties in jumping of the things that we might have kind of worked so hard for, and being connected to a very long time, where we have a certain attachment, even an egotistical attachment. If I'm not that, who am I gonna be? And the other thing, of course, is then when I listen to you, it's like, because there is so little attachment to being able to jump or fly from one flower to the other, that is also something that has established itself in how you see your work. You said earlier, when we did a little bit of a warm-up conversation, that you're not looking for things. You're not going to say at the end of the interview, whoever wants to work with you, because your mentor should find you here and there, because things find you. And that I only interviewed one person that was like that, Richard Fuhrmann, who did an interview about, why we have to tell our stories. And I think that's why you have to tell your story a little bit. What does that feel like? How did that come into your life? Or where are the struggles and the highlights of being so free of the God of more and the fearless to jump,
Yeah. Well, I think the identity piece is it's difficult because of it, you know, like and finding that, because it was very easy to, and I actually definitely had I don't have that anymore, but I had for about 2 years after my decision to step away from my sort of my role as company director of a company with, you know, 32 staff and a nice client list and all of that, and I was the director there, and that it's so easy to walk into a room, especially I guess in a more male-oriented environment still in business, that you're a woman. It's easier to put that strong foot forward when you feel that you have this sort of, I mean, maybe a bit of gravitas or status. And then when you're that no more, I used to find the question of, so what are you? What do you do? I hated the question because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm
Yeah.
kind of at the phase as well. I'm not 20, not knowing. I'm 40 something, not knowing at the time. I'm 45, not knowing. But now I actually, the question doesn't really bother me because I'm quite comfortable. But it took a long time to be comfortable with just not knowing that. And I feel like I'm in that sort of in-between phase of maybe shifting a little bit as well from this very kind of professional or corporate-y or, you know, work persona part of into, you know, where it's more like I think I need to be curious for a time and not commit to too many things so that I can allow that to unfold a little bit. I think that's probably one of the books that I read in the last few years, that term really stuck with me, this idea of allowing things to unfold. But if you're too full, there is no space for anything to unfold. So I think it's an exercise with, you know, with successes and failures of creating space, which I know is but it is definitely something that's part of my life, is to create the space for things to unfold. And the fuller and busier and more committed you are, even if you would have the inspiration or the idea, it'll be shut down very quickly because you'll be like, but I have no time for that, or how am I going to do that? So those questions come in too early in the exploring phase. Whereas if you have, so I'm able to do that now. One, I've learned to also in a really practical way to ring fence time better, and that's quite recent. So even though I have a big work project on, because I'm not full, I've just been able to decide, okay, that time is now available for that project for the next 2 months.
Yeah.
But if when that's finished, I can say that time is available for me to go and study something, or to read, or to do something completely different. I don't know, whatever comes in.
So just to rewind a little bit, we missed that step, and just so that the listener can orient themselves in, you know, like your whatever CV or what. So you come actually from, you came from a perspective of director because you built a company together with your husband, which kind of stepped away from. And what was the key moment that made you step away from it?
I think a general sense of, so it was a lot of fun. We built this business together. We probably started in 2005, same time that we had our first child. So we were very much in a building phase, and that would be my preferred time in anything, is the start. So we built that and were successful, and I think it came into being too routine, too much of a grind for me, that I wasn't inspired enough on a daily basis. And so but because I didn't know, I couldn't really put it into words, and I really also didn't know what I could do about it. I felt very trapped, and I think it's that feeling of being trapped that really causes a lot of distress for me. I become very agitated, very I can become very low from it, and I think back in the past I might have slipped into that sort of space of feeling done to, instead of feeling an actor in my own life. But it's that you're very passive, or a victim. It sounds so negative, but really that it's you're not in control. That's other people are controlling you. So through somebody I had a conversation with, I think it was actually somebody who was helping me with one of my, because I did everything in the business, from IT to the legals to account management to the graphic design to invoicing, finance, everything, right? And insurance, anything that was sort of contractual, all the back office. And somebody helped me with the HR. She said, oh, you should really talk to this guy, Shane Craddock. who's a business mentor. And I did, and I remember picking up the phone, and I was so in this modus of like, I'm fine. And he was like, so what you need to talk to me about? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was told to phone you.
And I followed.
Exactly. But I mean, as in almost sort of like, what's your problem? And my default would be, I don't have any problems. And then he's like, well, why are you phoning me? But anyway, so I met him, it was funny. And then he's a good friend now. Long relationship. But I remember starting to do work with him, and it really liberated me professionally. I mean, like, I think my turnover, my confidence went up, turnover went up by 183% in a year, stuff like that. I managed great results that side. But I remember being just very much exploring, like, why am I feeling so not in my place? And, why am I dissatisfied with these lists of things that I was just like not happy with? And so we just wrote it out. And I remember it was a small moment, but it was very transformational to actually write it out, really rank it in what's important. And then realize, I remember walking out after an hour and a half, knowing that I could just, by spending an hour and a few emails, few phone calls, few conversations, 80% of what was in my way, I could just clear. And it was so empowering that I was in my own way, to realize that it was actually me who was in my own way, but also me, therefore, that it was able to fix it. Instead of it being other people who are making my life difficult, it was actually me making my life difficult.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because I often find that I haven't been in the business world as an employee for long. I never managed really, because it was other people were making my life difficult. Now I'm just making my own life difficult most of the time, as you said. And then I find that also so engaging for myself to see, like, where am I holding myself back? Where can I not dream bigger? Why do I have to think in these venues of, or veins of, you have to be this, you have to do that. And so I love the conversation that we're having, even for myself, because I noticed if there is a time, the time is now, particularly with the pandemic, where everybody is shifting and needs to find their own step and their own footage again. Like, what do I want to imprint in this world? And now that all the values that seemed so solid have gone out of the window. That's at least how I feel about it. And how to encourage people to trust more, to jump. What would you say to them? What makes you trust to let go and do the next step?
I think, well, there's a couple of things I think, and I know we talked about that just before we started as well. I mean, I'm very conscious that what I'm speaking, the place I'm speaking from, is a place of real privilege. We are we're not in a society or country that suddenly we would literally be on the streets or have no way to sustain ourselves. There are so many parts of the world that are like that. So I'm speaking not from I don't feel I can speak universally, because I don't think that that is everybody's position. But so taking that as a sort of a given, I think, I think a lot of it, it's like, what are you telling yourself, and what is that constant voice companion that comes with you that is so loud and noisy? What is it telling you? You can't do it, or you can do it, or if you just leave that, or make that being something separate. And just try, I think, actually experimenting, but I'm not sure if that works for everybody. Maybe it's a character thing, but it's very much just experimenting and saying, you don't have to make this huge shift of like, okay, so I was whatever, an accountant in KPMG, and that's my identity. Because stepping away from identity, it's difficult, right? But it's not that you have to decide in advance, oh, I'm no longer that, now I'm going to be a marine scientist, and I'm going to spend my time on the beach surfing, and that's my picture of, like, my fantasy of what real life is. Because usually it's actually not the fantasy, it's like, what is that image in your head? Because I know I had a lot of these ideas of like, what kind of person did I want to be? But it's much more around the feeling that you imagine you would have in that new role.
Yeah.
right? So it's more about, so what can you do to create space for that feeling to, or that part of you to sort of have space, instead of thinking that it's something to be, or a title to have, or a place to live, or a whatever, you know, that they're very I think that those things get added afterwards. You know, it's like if you're making a new recipe, you don't give the name to the recipe before you make it. It becomes whatever was funny about the, or it did tasty about the story, becomes the name of the recipe afterwards. And I think it's the same for yourself.
Yeah, and I so agree, because I think that's the lack that we have. We have ideas, or we have ideas of building blocks. You know, this is like, I'm going to go to school, then I'm going to learn something, then, you know, I build my house, my family. And I know that for most listeners, maybe that's not so true anymore. And I know we're talking to a certain kind of listener here. I'm not streaming it into third world countries, you know, where people get inspired and hopeful, but we can also be trapped in the privilege in the first place. And what makes us, in my eyes, trapped, as much as you described it, is that we've lost connection to ourselves. And the first sensation is the body, you know, and this, what they call in Ayurveda, the Anamaya Kosha, you know, like that is real, you know. Am I squishy, or how do I feel today? You know, how does my skin feel? How does my hair feel, not how does my hair look, you know, like as we talked about bad hair days and stuff before. But it's about that, you know, just noticing your body and finding a way to get back. And a lot of people have been going back to searching for their bodies through getting walking, you know, seeing, and then going back to the method. Oh, I've walked 10,000 steps, but how did that feel to your body? Was that right? You know, how exhausted were you? And do you want to feel, was it a good or a bad exhaustion? You know, was that something that is supposedly right for you? And this is like where you keep calling it out there, you know, creating space, but this is exactly what I'm trying to help people with. And you probably in your own way, you know, because you're mentored to startups, you know, what do you want from that? And then from that sense of connection to yourself, you can give birth, you know, as they say, in so many ways. A startup is giving birth, and how can you birth something or hold something in you if you don't feel it? Yeah, thank you for making it really so clear.
Yeah, and I'm creating some pause, and that's just a lot of it is like, I mean, I know with what you do as well, a lot of it is, it's not deciding to do something, it's practicing it. Like I had a really, it was just 2 days ago, because I'm working on this big project, which I've been probably preparing for 3 years, and now it's active, right? And I knew in advance, cerebrally, there's going to be issues in the first weeks as we get started, and it's going to be stressful, and, you know, so that actually helped, knowing that it was coming. It doesn't make it any less stressful, because the reality is always, the real problems are always different than the imagined problems. So I had solutions for all of the problems I imagined could happen, and none of those happened because I've solved them, right?
Yes.
But it's all the stuff that I didn't anticipate. But I do these kind of, which has really helped me actually for the connection piece over the last 6-7 months. I do this virtual co-working. So, and it's, you know, you build a community that way. It's quite interesting. So I was on a call, and we do these kind of Pomodoro sessions of 25 minutes of work and a 5-minute break. And we were on a 5-minute break chatting, and I saw an email come in from the customer, and it was like, it was not a good email, right? And I saw it, but I didn't read it, but I just read the first line, and it was so interesting, because I was in this conversation and I wanted to stay with the conversation, but I actually was able to very consciously experience the physical response I was having to the message. I felt the adrenaline rush come up, I felt the color come up, I felt my brain getting fuzzy and not thinking clearly because of the stress, you know, and the worry about what was going to be in the email. But I just found it was just so, in the sense of that practice piece of actually pausing before concluding, or, you know, pausing before you act. It's easy to say, it's not so easy to do. And you know, and creating more space and more time for, or the length of the pause, because actually the issue that happened, by the way, was not an issue that was with us, and it was something that was resolved and clarity on in an hour and a half. But depending on how you respond to something yourself, you can have a very different outcome. So I was very grateful for having the few minutes to pause and to be able to actually also verbalize with other people, like, I'm having a panic attack right now, but I'm not reading the email. They were laughing. It was for them also. It was quite, I know that it was a really interesting experience for all of us, because they were like, oh, it's so interesting to see someone else experience something but in a sort of, very explicit way of what everybody has in their own. Everybody has moments of something happening that you're not expecting and makes you afraid. I know we've gone off on a tangent, but
no, we haven't. I mean, what I'm here, like, I'm starting to analyze you, of course, from my Ayurvedic perspective here, like the way you say, like, I like to start up things, and then I lose interest after a while. This is so Vata to me, this is such a classical Vata personality. I'm the same, I get with gusto into new things, and I'm doing and doing and doing, and then I fall off. And because there is no permanence to it, it seems there is no permanence to it. We don't give it value, but what I hear you saying, you made value out of the fact that you like starting up things, and you get that. And the other thing that is also Vata related is the fact, that when something hits our system, it gets confused, and that's exactly a little bit the description of too much Vata. It gets confused. It moves, but it doesn't know where to move anymore. And in that space, what my favorite teacher, Robert Swoboda, always says, like, don't freak out now, freak out later. So you did exactly the right thing. Shows also that you've really learned to deal with the Vata in you from a Kapha perspective. You give it a grounding, you give it a cohesion, and from there things don't get so, I don't know, you don't run into dire straits all the time with everything you do, and that upsets you. I hope so, at least.
No,
it sounds like you, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is an element, but I mean, because I would have always had, like, focus on one thing, those kind of things, or shiny objects. Absolutely, I'm totally a shiny objects kind of a person, but that is who I am. So I'm quite happy that but what can you build that is so I guess what I feel like I'm building at the moment is, so I love playing with shiny objects. So I just am working on creating a sandbox that has room for lots of shiny objects that I can play with, and I can pick up this one and play with it and enjoy it and put it down and then pick up something else. So what is the constant, or what do I need to create or build, is a place that I can play, that it's not just sand everywhere, if you know what I mean, and not just toys everywhere, but that there is some kind of metaphorical container, which I play also, and also a place to go to play, that it's so that there is some kind of definition and boundary to parts of your life instead of everything spilling over. But so I'm in the building phase there, I feel like. Yeah.
And it's so, and I mean, I needed to learn that, because I like, also I'm also shiny object and FOMO and all that. And it's nothing that we can really totally erase from our life. It's irreversible at this point, with all the other, like the gadgets, the glowing rectangles, we're getting drawn into that more. And so it's more a skill that we need to learn, or I learned to attain, by saying, okay, how do I feel in my body? Like, I feel really, I'm not landing. Now I'm getting really that sensation of overwhelmed. So that means I picked up, my sandbox has fallen apart. To me, that's always when I notice that my framework has fallen apart. And then I go back to what you did with your first mentor. I go like, out of all the list of things that go through my life and through my mind and through, whatever I want to pick up, what is really important and what needs to be outsourced and what do I need to drop, and that's my way of dealing with the sandbox as well.
Yeah, I guess it feels like I'm sure you have too. I've done it so many times now, so I don't have that fear anymore that it's not fixable. It's just sometimes like, oh, it's so much work, I don't want to do the work, right? But that's something different than not being able to do it. So it's a different struggle. I think there's still a struggle, but it's a very different one. So it's not so frightening. But I don't find that things that frightening, because I've learned there's certain tools even in business as well that I've learned. So the key one for me is communicate. So not to run. And even if the answer is I have no idea, dear client, what is going on, but I am finding out for you, that builds the trust. If you hide, or if you go, and it's in relationships as well, if you hide, or and you really become that shivering little mollusk in the corner, then then it's frightening for other people as well. So, and then you cause more to come back.
Yeah, and that I find so, like we were talking about communication, and I think we have to, or I would like to add the word like truthful communication or honest communication, because a lot of the things that I know that people do in business, they cover up. They kind of say like, like, yeah, I got that. And then trying to hide their mistakes. And of course, there is a degree of where you do that because it might be just something you forgot, but there is a degree when you have to come more into honest communication. And the less we do around that, the more perfect our world seems to be, like a whole film of marketing where everything is just, as you say, shiny and glorious and correct, or like a romantic comedy, a constant flick from one nice scene to the next, and we never see the character messing up in tiny ways, like unless it's kind of helpful for the growth. But what I hear you saying is like, let's come back to communicate, where it's kind of appropriate,
not just out but also in, so that communication with self, but also with in a professional, like, so with customers, even there, I think if you look, if there's some basic things that are right, that that you're good at what you do, that you can fix it, that you it's important to you that you look after the customer, all of those things you can communicate in lots of ways, also non-verbally. And then it's okay to say, I actually don't know, but I will find out, or what, in some format, something like that. You can, and that creates a lot of peace with a customer, or in any kind of relationship. But then you're building a relationship. I think it's a little bit around that piece of not separating yourself so much from the people that you work with, whether they're your colleagues or whether they're your customers, that they are relationships that you're building, and that you are building. They're not existing. They're not there since you were little, so you are creating new relationships, and you have to find parameters in that. You have to understand each other. Like, I'm learning, for example, this project now about my customer, very positive things. I mean, they're from a very reputable company that have always had very high ethics, and you can see that is filtered down. It's incredible to watch how they, that practicing what you preach, that it's not just marketing words or word values, that you put on a wall, like we would do that. That's with the business signage. We would actually stick those words on a wall physically, but that they actually, the most important part of that is filtered down. It's really interesting.
That they, values, that they are alive, and so they are also malleable. What is the value of communication for me? Like, how does that shape and shift between everything I experience, as you say,
that they're embodied, to use it literally, that they're internalized as well. That's really, I mean, and that's quite an advanced process, I think, in a business, but it's great when you get there.
Right. I think we've come to a good ending here. So my very last question is always, is there something you want to say to the listener, advice, or maybe something that's important to you right now in your life? Is there something that you want to conclude with?
I think, well, I don't know what one thing that's just coming to mind now, I think, is just that to allow for other things than just the picture of what you hear or have told yourself or have been told is important, but actually to just enjoy some of the figuring out, and that's okay, to not know, or that it doesn't have to be so defined, that maybe it's more that you're searching a state of being versus a position in life or a result, that it's more how are you going to feel or be in the next what next while, that's a different way of a different goal, let's put it that way, which is less easy to communicate. As you can see, I'm struggling to actually put it in words. So because it's much more for me also a feeling that I'm searching for. So I think that would be the piece, that it's also okay. So I'm 40, I just turned 48. I still don't know what I want to do when I'm grown up, and that's okay too. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I think like the most important thing I hear you saying is don't expect immediate results. Don't kind of get hooked into the result like a title or something, but just be with what you want to experience and what your feeling is driving you to experience, so that you might trust a little bit more in your own life story and in the story that your life is creating by itself, by you just kind of being more in tune with you. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. It is.
Well, thank you, Jan. That was a very exciting conversation and so timely. I love it.
Good. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Always nice talking to you, though.
And I hope you, dear listener, also enjoyed our little banter and beyond, and took something from this. So thanks and goodbye for now.
Goodbye for now. Lovely to see you. Have a great day, Alex.
If you enjoy listening to my podcast, please consider to become a patron at patreon.com/Alexandra Kreis and pledge your donation.